Okay, I know Kelly is on. Miss Kelly, where are you?
Right here.
Okay. Well,
hey, Jinx, before we get started, Kelly, excuse me, but I have to go back and do a little bit of housekeeping. Somebody in our last session, I realized toward the very, very end, asked a question about how did they raise their hand to ask a question. So if you look at the bottom of your screen while you're on the Zoom call, at the very right hand across the bottom, it says reactions. And if you click on that and you put your cursor there, you can applaud, you can laugh and heart and shake a confetti, but you can raise your hand. And so that's how I saw that Dina had a question and she had raised her hand. So I just wanted, and I see you that said you had a question, and I will call you later with a question from that first hour. So Parwin.
Thank you.
So Kelly, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
That's all right. That's all right. I was gonna do that anyway. So I'm glad you did it, Carol. So hi, my name is, or Jinx, did you want to start and then you go to me?
Nope. Okay. Take it away, Kelly.
Okay, so it's great to see everybody. My name is Kelly Jones. I am the marketing director for all of Community Mortgage, from Arkansas to Georgia, Chattanooga to Central Mississippi and lower. So we're really excited to be here. From this time last year, the market in and of itself has taken so many dips, dives, and turns, and it affects us in our mortgage profession and in your profession, buying and selling real estate, every day. And sometimes it's really confusing as to why that happens. And I'm really excited to bring on Andy O'Fee. He's with our division of Crump Mortgage, which is a great brand in the Memphis area that we have a great relationship with. They're a part of Community Mortgage. They're a part of the Community Mortgage family. And Andy, actually, you'll notice, Southerners, he is from New York City, and he has a really great experience in literally the stock market, mortgage-backed securities. He was there that day. He knows about mortgage from a whole different side. We know the selling, we know the helping of clients. He knows the other side, and he has tracked this for a long time. He has great resources and great knowledge when it comes to this. So I'm really excited to have Andy O'Fee on here to talk about what the heck is the market doing and why does it affect us on a daily basis.
Thanks, Kelly. Good morning, everybody. I'm calling you from sunny Germantown this morning. I work primarily out of the Forest Hill office in Germantown with Sue Turner's group, but I do float around the Shelby County offices to help out other offices and be there for the agents when and if they have questions during the day, and especially over the weekend. It seems like I get a lot of phone calls on Saturdays and Sundays, and we still take care of people then also. So again, great intro. Thank you, Kelly. Great to be here. Yeah, I do take the business a lot differently than a traditional loan officer, given my previous experience when it comes to where I used to work. I traded mortgage-backed securities for almost 20 years on Wall Street, as well as down here when I moved down here after 9/11 in 2003. I got into... What was that? I'm sorry. Oh, somebody jumped in. Okay, so anyway, I came down here in 03 after 9/11, and we all know what happened in 07 and 08 with the mortgage and the housing industry. It imploded. So I got out of that side of it, and I called Rob Crump up one day, and I told him, hey, man, I know mortgage is probably better than anybody in the city. Let me get a shot to originate some loans. And he thought I was crazy, but he gave me a shot, and here I am now, I guess 12 years later, and enjoying it. So we are, again, a division of Community, and I love working for Rob and the group at Community. We do a great job, locally owned and operated, which is great. And I hope that if you don't have a community mortgage office in your region, that we're working on getting one there, because our platform, I think, is the best by far as getting everything done and closed on a timely basis. So there's my pitch about our company, but let's talk about the market, because for sure, we are in a total transition mode right now from where we were pre-COVID through the summer, and now starting February and going into the spring buying months with an entirely new rate environment. Now, if you follow me on Facebook, and I would encourage you to do that, I update my Facebook page on a daily basis when it comes to market moves. And today we saw another move higher as far as Treasury yields go, which translates to higher mortgage rates. Now, I don't want everyone to panic, because we're still talking about historically low numbers. At this time last year, pre-COVID, the historical low on a 30-year mortgage was 3.125. We all know through the summer, we got into August, and we did see some people be able to get into a 30-year note at under 2.5%, which is absolutely incredible. People took advantage of that from the refinance side also, and refinanced their home, saved money monthly, cashed out equity, consolidated debt, et cetera, et cetera. That ride is slowly coming to an end. The ship is sailing on the refi boom. However, again, we're still starting to see people come in. On the buy side, though, it's imperative that you, as you're the first contact with the borrower 99% of the time. I don't have people walk into my office at Crump Mortgage and ask for a mortgage, and then, hey, I'll refer you out to a real estate agent. It just doesn't work that way in the industry. So as the point of contact, they are being fed information by the media that says that rates are starting to go higher. Well, yes, they are, but they're not at a point where we need to be overly concerned. No, they're not at the lows, but they're at the highs. Now, from an economic standpoint, I'm going to give you a little lesson. Put your phones down. This can get a little complicated, so just stay with me. But just remember two things. Two things drive interest rates. Number one is the state of the economy, and number two is inflation. Now, we all know that once COVID hit, we saw 10 million jobs disappear from the industry, right? So the economy took a little bit of a swell. Well, you didn't know that in regards, because if you look at the stock market, stocks continue to move higher and higher and higher. Well, that's a result of vaccines rolling out and the economy looking like it's going to rebound where it was back in 2020 before everything happened. Now, what happens when people get stimulus money and they get their tax return money? Well, they're going to take it and they're going to spend it. I mean, that's just who we are. A lot of people are saving, but a majority of them are going to spend it. And when we start to see things heat up on the spending side, that means that prices on general products are going to go higher. They just are. It's a smooth trend that's going to happen. And that's what the market is pricing in right now. And that's why we're starting to see rates move from the lows where we were back in August. So very important when you say, hey, why are rates going higher? Well, inflation is the killer of product. And I'll explain to you why. If you took a mortgage out and I'm getting paid on an interest rate per month at whatever the percent of the mortgage is, and I get $2,000 a month per se. Well, I take that $2,000 and I go and I buy things off of a list. So at the end of each month, I have a $2,000 budget from the money that I'm getting in from my mortgage. Well, all of a sudden, prices of the things that I was buying start going up. Now, if there were 10 items on that list that I could buy for $2,000, well, all of a sudden, now I can only buy 8 of them. So what do I have to do now to offset that difference? Well, I need to charge a higher interest rate for the next mortgage that gets done. So that's what inflation does. It deteriorates the value of your fixed return on the mortgage. So that's why we're starting to see rates move higher. The economy is doing better. Everyone's loving the stock market. I'm sure everyone's heard news about GameStop and all the stuff that's going on and how the stock market's being manipulated. But in our terms of where we are, the market, we are now under a new transition and we're back to levels that we were back pre-COVID, which is fine. So your borrowers may have missed the bottoms, but it's not the end of the world. All right. Now, getting onto this call before, I heard some very interesting points about what it was like to get into multiple offer situations. And one of my tricks that I do with a borrower that goes in on a multiple offer, and maybe you can speak to your lender or your boots on the ground, whoever it might be that you're using right now, and have that lender call the listing agent. It's an easy call. I do it every deal. And you know why? A lot of the agents here know me in town. They know our company. I make that phone call and I let them know that I've done three things. I've pulled credit, I've verified income, and I've verified their down payment. And I tell them, hey, the closing date is X. I'm ready to close. Can we get a deal done? When they hear that, the possibility of your offer getting bumped to the higher side is going to go up. I guarantee it. Now, you don't get it all the time because the seller is obviously trying to net a certain amount of money on each transaction. But that is a little trick that I do, that if you can tell your loan officer to call the listing agent, you just never know. It might bump your offer to the top side. Okay. One other thing I want to tell you about is I have a lot of tools, calculators that I use. And one of them is called bidding over ask. Now, we all know what home prices are doing, right? They're going up. Nationally, they were up almost 10%. Shelby County, and I don't know the rest of Tennessee, I'll have to research that, but Shelby County forecast right now is about 3 to 3.5%. I think that's incredibly conservative. So when a buyer goes in to purchase a home, if they're going to bid over ask price, they need to know and think about, what is my house going to be potentially worth in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? Now, remember, these are forecasts. Nothing is in stone. But if the trend continues with the lack of supply and prices and the demand being extremely strong, well, in 3 to 4 years, their home should be up X amount of dollars based on the sales price. So I tell people, look, why don't you look at it this way? If you're going to go in over ask, let's take a look at when you'll recoup the difference over that price. Now, again, it's not something that I would say it's a guarantee, but it's another tool that I present to borrowers when they go in a multiple offer and they want to go in above list. It's significant because it will also help you win more deals in multiple offer situations. Now, I can go through all this with you on Facebook. Again, I've posted several things on there. I do a lot of rent versus buy analysis for people because we have a section in Shelby County downtown that have a lot of apartments, a lot of renters down there that are paying $2,000 to $3,000 a month in rent for a shoebox downtown when they can own something. So there are a lot of tools that I have available to you to use when it comes to this. Now, let's talk about the housing market as we go into 2021. And I'm doing a 5-part presentation on Facebook, breaking it down section by section so I don't overwhelm everybody. So I'm trying to squeeze everything in here in a little bit. But one thing you need to think about going into 2021 are the demographics of the people that are going to be buying homes, okay? In 1987, we had a spike in births. That is the average age of the first-time home buyer. Okay, right now, 32 to 33 nationwide. They are going to come out of the woodwork again this spring and summer to buy their first time home. I guarantee it. They will be there knocking on your door. We've already seen numbers go up exponentially in the last couple of months, regardless of what rates are going to do. They have money. They want to buy their first home. They are out there. And I can guarantee this year is going to be another solid year. Of course, we have issues with supply. I heard you guys talking about new construction. Yeah, lumber costs are through the ceiling. Builders are having issues right now. They are. And that's the only way we're going to get supply. The only other way we're going to get supply too is that if you have empty nesters start selling their current home, now the question is where are they going to go? So it's a weird dynamic going on right now in the housing market. But what's going to drive it, I think, going into the spring and through the buying session is going to be these first-time home buyers that are now at the point where they're going to start wanting to make their first step into home ownership, either because they've just gotten married or they just had a kid and they want to own their own home. So I think this year is really going to be a phenomenal year. I really do. I think we're going to hit some bumps in the road as far as rates go. It's natural right now. We've got $1.9 trillion in stimulus about to hit the economy. And, like I said, the government's got to pay that. The Federal Reserve is going to do all they can to make sure that rates stay at or near the lows because the housing market is the tip of the spear as far as the economy goes. So they're going to do what they can to keep rates low. I think you're going to have a huge swell of first-time home buyers in that 32 to 33-year-old bucket. And I think higher priced homes which is where a lot of the demand is, because that's where a lot of the supply is, will continue to sell also. So that was about a 15 or 12-minute run there. I hope I didn't ramble, but do you guys?
Can I get you to touch on one thing, Andy? I remember a couple of years ago, we were at Highway 64 for John Criswell's office, and you did a similar thing. And there was a huge rate spike that brought buyers kind of out of the market. So with that rate increase versus possible rate increases coming our way this year or ever, what would be the difference in that? Do you think buyers are going to react the same way, or do you think the demand is too high for it to really contract the amount of buyers in the market?
I don't think you're gonna. That's a good question. I honestly look at rates. Okay, we're at right now. If you can lock in I don't know where an FHA is right now, but majority of my deals are conventional. They're probably with excellent credit, 80% loan. They're probably right at or near 3 to maybe 3 1/8 right now. Okay. So if you were to look at where rates were last year at this time versus where they are today, the monthly payment difference that I just ran for somebody on a $300,000 house with 20% down is about $70 a month higher. Now, is that a lot of money? Well, not really, but it is higher. If we go from 3 to 3 1/2, then you're looking at $150 a month difference. Now, that's where things start to get a little bit dicey, okay? However, I think the demand is still there. There's a psychological thing going on in the American consumer, okay? What is it? Well, they talk to their neighbor, they talk to their friends at church, they talk to their coworkers, and everyone starts talking about their refinance and where their rate is. And all of a sudden they hear things go, oh goodness, they're getting over 3%. Well, it's not the end of the world, but they have a psychological barrier in their head that says, oh my goodness, I better do something now so I can get in. And I think this little bump in rates is really going to help more, because I think people will be even that more aggressive to buy a house. That's what I think. I think it's healthy for us right now, because I think the housing market is really getting almost too hot, where prices are going up so fast that I think the bump in rates will hopefully kind of cool things down a little bit on home prices. So that was a very good question. Thank you. Did I answer it, Kelly?
Yes, you did. And then I remember you talked about earlier about treasuries, and I know Mr. Sandlin talks about that. Could you give like a quick, easy rundown of how treasury bonds and all that stuff kind of affects?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So, the 10-year treasury note is kind of I look at it this way. So mortgage-backed securities are like a dinghy in the water, and 10-year treasuries are the ocean. Okay. So we look at 10-year treasuries as kind of where the waves are going to be going. So we look at that as a benchmark. Now, that is not going to be directly correlated to what happens with mortgage rates, but that's one thing that we use as a benchmark to track. I look at prices on mortgage-backed security bonds, which is what are originated when we originate a loan. So when we start to see bond prices go down, that means the value comes down. And like I talked to you about that before, when values come down, as quote unquote, when rates go higher, you need to offset that with a higher interest rate to deal with inflationary problems. So we look at yields on the 10-year note kind of like as a bellwether tracker to watch to see which way the market's going. And that's pretty much what the entire industry looks at. I look at both, but I try to keep it simple by looking at yields first. So there is a complex way of looking at both, but I won't get into that because I'll blow people's minds away. So.
Well, then could you give, like, if somebody's looking online or they have financial newsletters that they get in their inbox every day, what are maybe 2 or 3 key things that they can look for to say, oh, something's about to change in the market, whether up or down?
That's a
as
good
far
question.
As maybe
So,
interest rates.
yeah, I mean, you could look at yields. That's number one. Like I said, the 2 things that are going to drive rates, and just bury it in your head, are the economy and the inflationary pressures that we see. So we all know, I don't know about you, but I went to fill my car up with gas the other day, and gas prices are up about 40 cents since the new administration came in. So little things like that, you don't have to read it. You can feel it. When you go to the store, just see how much more your bills are going to be. See how much more things are going to cost, because we may not feel that directly, but we will down the road. So I think if you're going to look at something online, hey, you know what? Look at yields, look at what the stock market is doing, because you have two entities in the investment world. You've got stocks, which are technically a riskier investment based on a performance of a company. And then you have treasuries, which is a fixed return. So when you buy a US Treasury, the government is guaranteeing a certain amount of yield over a certain number of years. So people will take the less risky asset out of the stock market and reinvest it into something where they know they're going to get a fixed return. But when stocks are doing well because the economy is doing well, it's like going to Vegas and you're on a run at the crap table. Well, heck, I'm going to keep throwing it in there and try to make more money. If I can make 10% in the stock market instead of making 1.5% in the treasury market, well, I'm going to put my money over here. So I would watch the stock market closely to see where we stand there. Now, I think the stock market is incredibly overvalued right now. It hasn't stopped. I mean, it was up 400 points yesterday on the Dow. I think the stock market is completely overvalued. And I think at some point we're going to see a correction. When? I don't know. I'm not that good to call it. But I do know this, that John F. Kennedy's father had a situation back in the 20s and the 30s when the stock market crashed. And his theory was this. He was getting his shoes shined on the street. This is a true story. And the shoe shine boy asked him about stocks. Now, if you're around the water cooler today and people are starting to throw around symbols on the stock market, well, that's kind of a euphoria mode where you're like, well, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking of the dot-com bubble when everything blew up and everyone's like, hey, we need to buy this, 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 and this. Well, everyone becomes a stock expert now. So I think that's something just to keep in the back of your mind. It's a true story. I kid you not. Shoe shine boy says, hey, buy this stock. It's a good stock. And you've got investors now buying stuff on Robinhood that really have no clue what they're doing. And they're, technically they're driving the market. So I keep my eye on the stock market more than anything else right now.
Now, I know that this was a big debate starting, April of last year. So if there's anybody new on this call that maybe just got into the business or they haven't really studied this a lot, the big question that people go over and over again, they think this pandemic era that we're in is liken itself to the market crash of 2008, 9. Why is it different? For anybody that doesn't know, finally, why is it different?
That's a great question. So it's very simple too. Okay. And when you watch some of my presentations, one's coming up this week, is the fact that we're in an entirely different market on the housing market side. In 07 and 08, the demand was, I'm going to use a bar chart with my hand, the demand was here. Inventory was here. So we had little demand and oversupply of homes. That's what caused the market to crater in 07 and 08. This year, we all know we've got demand here and we've got supply down here. So we are not in a housing bubble like everyone's saying, oh my goodness, this is going to implode because of COVID. No, we have no supply. Builders are hamstrung because of inventory costs. Lumber costs, labor costs are going through the ceiling. Copper went through the roof again. So we're in an entirely different situation right now, regardless of COVID. Now, COVID's been terrible. It really has. It's put us back on our heels, but slowly, as the vaccines continue to roll out and more people become vaccinated and these numbers drop, we're going to get back to where we were about a year ago. I firmly believe that. And the demand is just going to be there. And the people that missed the bottom of the market through the summer of 2020, they're just going to be subject to having to buy a house with a rate at 3% or higher, slightly higher, which to this day is still astronomically low. So I hope that answers your question there. It's a totally different housing market than it was back in 07, 08, when everything imploded, when there was too much supply, no demand, and that's what caused everything to crater.
Okay, that's great. So going back maybe to your point about some of these young buyers, even sadly, even still at 30 years old, a lot of these buyers are paying off student loans of undergrad and graduate loans. How is that going to start affecting them going forward in their purchase ability? And two, a lot of us have heard forgiveness of loans and all that. What does that look like going forward?
I don't know about what the government's going to do as far as forgiveness goes. There was a period of time in our industry where if your loans were deferred on a student loan basis, that we wouldn't use a payment. Well, what the government thought after that was like, oh my gosh, when they come out of deferment, how are they going to pay their mortgage and the amount of money that they owe on their student loan debt? So what the entities did, Freddie, Fannie, and Ginnie Mae all decided was that, hey, we need to count at least a 1% payment window or payment per month on that student loan to determine if they can make the mortgage payment along with the student loan debt when it does come out of deferment, or they have to start making those payments. So I think that has been a long-term problem for a lot of people going forward. That's a very good point. And it's not going to go away. I have no idea what the government's planning on doing. I think the president just turned down the option of trying to eliminate $50,000 worth of student loan debt. He shot that down, I think, at the end of last week. So I don't think that student loan debt is just going to disappear. I think a lot of people are reading into that, hoping that it does. But from a loan officer's perspective and from a guideline perspective, those are not going to go away as far as I'm concerned. I think it's something that everyone has to be aware of. I think first-time home buyers need to be aggressive and figure out payment plans for those and try to pay them off. And I think a lot of people have the mentality that, well, I went to school and I've got $200,000 in student loan debt and the government's going to pay it off for me for nothing. Well, unfortunately, you're rolling the dice there. I don't think that's going to work.
That's great. Does anybody else have any questions? I know I primed him along, and because I know there are a lot of questions that we get on a regular basis, so I try to cover all of those. Anybody else have any questions or about the market or what mortgages are going to do and how it's going to affect you on a daily basis?
One thing I will add to you is that there are going to be a lot of terms out there that are going to get thrown at you from the media. Now, listen, I'm not here to bash any of any of the national stations, but there is a real estate expert on CNBC, I'm not going to mention her name, that has been bearish on the market since 2010. And she's been wrong the whole way. And she finally now is starting to get on board. Her name is Diana Olick, and you have to be careful what she says. She sells drama. So whenever you see a negative drop, like we saw home prices appreciate from the Case-Shiller index as well as the FHFA index, which is more of a broader scope. It takes the top 100 communities. Memphis was number 76 in the country with a 10.1% year-over-year appreciation. She'll look to find a hole in one of those reports to make it sound like the housing market is imploding, and it's not. So I'd be very careful what you hear in the news. Just be careful what you read, because your borrowers are going to be reading that too. So if I can give you information on Facebook on a daily basis, so it gives you more ammo when you're having a conversation with a borrower to make you look that much more dangerous from the investment side, I hope I'm doing that. I think I've helped a lot of people with some of the terminology that's out there, as well as what to watch for. My wife is a former real estate agent, and she reads my posts every day. And she is my biggest critic, because I'll put something out there and she'll be like, Andy, no one knows what the hell that means. So I have to go back in and I have to rewrite it so it's not on a technical basis, but it's more on a simplistic basis, like I did this morning, saying that rates were 1/4 to 3/8 of a point higher week over week. So I try to make it as simple as possible for everybody out there. So please ask a question. I'd love to hear from somebody, please.
I got a question, and this is your day in, day out. You can do this with your eyes closed, I'm sure. So let's talk about lender requirements for different types of loans. Can we do specifically FHA and VA? So like lender requirements, and then what are some of the non-allowables for these types of loans?
Okay, so requirements as far as qualification goes, well, FHA and VA are government products, okay? They are the loans when they get originated, so they get originated and they're sold into a pool of mortgages. They are backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. So it's almost like a U.S. Treasury when they get originated. So FHA is more aggressive, as well as VA as far as rates go. They are always and have been historically lower than conventional product, just because of the fact that the government is backing them and they are assuming the risk. So on a day in and day out basis, as far as what non-allowables go on a VA loan, I always tell people to assume that they're going to be about $1,500. Now, what we cannot charge a veteran, we cannot charge them origination or processing fees, which our fees are just under $1,200. So that would be considered a non-allowable. So when you write that contract up, you may want to put in there on a VA contract, you may want to write in there that the seller to pay up to $1,500 in non-allowables. Now, they don't have to accept that. So, it's not mandatory for the seller to pay non-allowables. They don't have to. They could say no. So what we do on our VA product, when we price our loans, accordingly to offset that money that would be considered non-allowable. So you could write it in there. That's fine. We could use that towards closing, towards closing costs. But you wouldn't need to put that in there at this time. I hope that's very confusing, non-allowables. So I would just write 1,500 or leave it blank. Now, Kelly, your question about what are the day ins and day outs as far as requirements go? Well, regardless of the loan program, I'm very tough with my borrowers. I'm going to be honest with you. I am. I love working with them, but this is a very important transaction, and I'm there to represent them on the finance side. And I let them know on the front end that they need to get us documentation when we ask for it. So we're good. I get a loan application. I either have a face-to-face, pre-COVID I did, face-to-face meeting, or I get on the phone with them and do a Zoom meeting and go over what we need. Documentation is so important in the process. If a borrower is on top of it and gets us what we need when we need it, particularly on the front end to get them pre-approved properly, the loan's going to go smoothly. If by chance in the middle of it, they start saying, well, I didn't get an email, or I never got the text message, or I never got the phone call. Well, that's when things can start getting a little bit dicey. Now, that's not your responsibility on the real estate side. That's our responsibility. But if I set the precedent on the front end that, look, this is what I expect of you, and if you want to close on this date, you got to play by my rules. And they laugh about it. But I say to them, look, it's a lengthy process. It could be very, very tedious and monotonous. But if you stick with us when we do it and we get us what we need, and if I can help you, if you send me how to get into your account, there's so many ways we can assist to make the process that's much more smooth, to take the burden off of them and you. Because look, you're giving me your client, you are my client, I'm representing you, and we're so important, obviously, in the transaction to make sure we hit that close date. Now, I missed one close date last year because of a green card expire, and there was no way of catching it. I don't miss close dates. I just don't, and I won't. And we had a rough week last week with snow and everything. I've been in my car going and getting docs from people. I don't miss a close date. I'm going to make it, and we're going to make it happen because that's what we agreed on when we first signed. And that's what you want to hear too. Your lender should say, hey, I don't miss a close date, and I'm going to get it closed on that day because that's what it means. So did I answer that question? I don't know, Kelly. Did I? Okay. So yeah. I see some familiar faces out here from the conference. It's pretty rough. We didn't get a chance to do it this year, but I hope we can do it whenever they have it scheduled again. That's always a lot of fun down in Florida. So,
yep, it was.
But anyway, I think the housing market as a whole, guys, I think we're going to have another solid year. I think the market is strong. I think the groundwork is there. The demand is there. The supply is low. And I think that's just going to continue moving on, despite the fact that we're going to have a couple of months where we're going to get some spikes in rates. And I just don't think that's going to be the end of the world.
Yeah, I agree. Well, anybody else have any questions for Andy? Just to let you all know, in the chat box, I put his Facebook page that he does all of his updates on. And just a couple of notes from what he's talked about. And I do want to note, he has, because I'm on it, so I can see what he's doing and all the good stuff. So sometimes he does like text videos. If you want to get on that, if you rather not have it on your inbox, in your email inbox or on Facebook, you can have it on your text thread. He can put you on that. But it's true. He has a lot of information in it, and it's a way, except it's out of the realm of just buying and selling and how to position yourself. It's just really just making yourself more knowledgeable about the process, because 9 times out of 10, unless you're super into investors or like you're going to have buyers that have financing, and it's best for you to be the one with the answers when not only your buyers have questions, but your past clients have questions. When you become the resource for as much as possible of the real estate industry and you have that team behind you to give you those answers, you're going to thrive and your business is going to thrive because you're not a commodity. You're not the person that they call only when they need to buy and sell. You're the person that they call when they have questions about anything having to do with the real estate industry. So that's why I encourage you, even if you're not in the Tennessee market, you can always have Andy's stuff or our information on file and just become more knowledgeable than the very next person that's going to come into that listing or buyer's presentation behind you or in front of you. Be the person who knows more.
Andy, I want to ask a question. Several of our folks on this call today are really new and might not have walked through as many transactions as others. So you give your best advice on what agents can do to make to make the lending process work best.
Don't call me at 9 o'clock at night.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No, that's, I'm usually asleep by that time. Well, to make the process simple is this. So as I mentioned before, and Kelly said it too, is that you as the agent are the point of contact. Okay. I use this kind of goofy reference. You know, when people go to buy a car, they walk in, they smell the leather, and then they figure out how they're going to pay for it. It's the same thing with the housing market. They go online, they look at houses online, they call you, the agent, because they know you're the one that's going to get them in the house, and then they got to figure out how to pay for it. So, leads come to me through you. You are the bread and butter for me to survive. So what you want to do is when you have a borrower or a buyer that comes to you, okay, you can ask some generic questions, and you just kind of have to be careful what you ask. But, you can ask them, hey, do you know what your credit score is by any chance? Or have you owned a home in the past? Or, do you have a budget in mind? Just some questions you can ask them. Then at that point, once you feel comfortable with that, I don't care if they think they have a bad credit score. I would send them to me anyway. Okay. Because what I can do is not only can I foster someone that has a poor credit score to potentially something in 6 to 12 months for you to get, but if they have an excellent credit score, I can at least get them pre-approved to go as soon as possible. Now, I would encourage you to have them call, and the turnaround time in the industry right now, the customer service in the mortgage industry is terrible. Okay. And Kelly hit a very important, she used the word commoditized. And that's what all of these big box stores are doing out there. Loan Depot, all these big guys, Quicken Loans, they've got these fancy apps on their phone. It's commoditized because that first-time homebuyer likes to use tech, but in reality, tech doesn't always work. It's the contact that you have with the client. And that's what's different about our company as a whole, being here locally and dealing with somebody that's boots on the ground in the area where you're working. So to answer your question, you get a borrower, you get them in front of your lender right away. Let the lender ask questions and let them dig it up and figure out if they can do it. Now, my turnaround time on a pre-approval letter, if they get me documents in a day, you're getting pre-approved that day. Okay. If it's a self-employed person and they have 2 years of tax returns required, well, that could take a couple of days because I always shoot that through underwriting to make sure I've got the income correct. If you've got income, is always the biggest hurdle that we have to verify too. So that's some things that we have to look at in detail. But if you get a W-2 employee that's, he's got 20% down and he's got a 740 credit score and he's ready to go, that's a pretty good pre-approval turnaround time within at least a day to a few hours, as long as they get me what I need to the document to review it. Okay. So
I think we have one question, Andy.
Go ahead.
That's me. Okay. I have a client who is closing on his home in Nashville on the 26th and is moving to
tomorrow, right? March or February?
February.
Okay.
Plus they closed on the 24th, which was yesterday, I believe, or day before.
Right.
Yesterday. So he's closing tomorrow. He's moving to Memphis, and I'm going to be his agent. He has a VA. He's a veteran. He's already shown me his pre-qualification letter. but he wants to use his own bank. He's like, when I asked him about being pre-qualified, he told me that he had been banking with the same bank for 50 years.
Okay.
So I really, since this is like my first transaction, how do I go about getting his funding? I mean, I don't know how that part of it works. Since
Well, that's a
I'm
good
not going
question.
in-house with you guys.
That's a good question. So one thing that your borrower can do, and I do this with a lot of people, there are rate shoppers out there. They're going to want to get the best deal. That's natural. If your borrower wants me to review what he has, I mean, I could take a look at it to see, hey, I think he's getting a good deal, or, I'll shoot straight with you. I don't think he's getting a good deal, or whoever it is. I don't know who the bank is that he's been working with for 50 years. Have there been banks around for 50 years? I don't know. They've all been either bought out or sold, but
Wells Fargo been around since forever, but
yeah. Well, what you could tell him in that circumstance is that, sir, you have a better chance potentially of buying a house in this market environment when you use a local lender, because the realtors here in Memphis have they want to know who the lender is. They really do. That's just what it is. And now even so more so with the volume where it is, and with demand where it is, and with supply where it is, and with sellers, they want to get their money. And you may just want to tell him, hey, why don't you just give one other guy a shot and let him see what he does. And if he says no, then you've tried.
okay.
You can also say, again, let Andy take a look at your profile or look at the deal you're getting, and he'll be a straight shooter. He'll tell you if he thinks it's legit or not. And I will. I'll break it all down. And if I think it's a good deal based on where the market is, then by all means, he needs to go with that guy.
Yeah, this guy's an attorney, and he is an older gentleman, and he's very distinguished. So he's going to tell me a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. I mean, that's totally fine. You're going to have clients that are challenging like that. I love talking to attorneys. I'm from New York. I talk fast. I'm sure he probably doesn't talk maybe as fast, but the angle that I would take from that is, hey, would you like an opportunity to speak to somebody locally in Memphis that may help you potentially get into the house that you want compared to what your other guy is, just because of, hey, he knows a lot of agents in town, and they know that he does a good job, and that might just bump your offer to the top. You may just want to try that.
All right, cool. Thanks for the advice.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Do you have anybody else with a question?
Come on, there's got to be some
Question
questions
for
out there.
him. I actually have a question for Kelly.
Okay.
You're going to love that I love bringing you more work. You're just going to love me. You're going to be cussing my name under your breath.
Bring it.
Is it possible? I love your newsletters that we get, but it would be really cool if like attached or part of it was like a JPEG that we could put to share on social media about whatever you're discussing. I mean, you included like a PDF, and I guess they could do a screenshot of the PDF and do that. But if there's some way to do some sort of JPEG, even though, rates just went up yesterday, 0.75 of a point,
Yeah. So actually, I think it was like this time last year, I used to make a PDF and a JPEG for sharing, and it was within the same kind of click through. So yeah, that doesn't, it's just downloading the file in a different format. Happy to do that. So
Cool.
if you please put your name in the chat. If you do not receive my emails, I send them every single week, and I have 3 years worth now. So if you're not getting it and you want to, please let me know. They usually come with a PDF, something that you can print off that day and use. And yes, so for next week's, I will send it also in a JPEG format that you can share on social media. And I just ask that if you do share it on social media, yes, our logo is going to be on it. But if you could tag us, that'd be really great. And we're just at communitymtg on Facebook, or like us on Facebook, so that at least you can do that as well, and you'll get our information.
Hey, Kelly,
So,
so you're using the distribution list to send out your emails.
yes, I use the all user
Right.
basically.
So they are getting your emails. Now they
Right.
may not be, so I'm suggesting they go back into their email and look for Kelly Jones, an email from Kelly Jones. because I see them every week. I know. So if, we're using the distribution list, so they should be getting them. But
should be.
so often, oh gee, they say we didn't get this. And the truth of the matter is they just didn't see it. They don't.
Right. Sometimes if you have your email forwarded, you may just not see it, or if you click it, if you delete it enough, it'll completely turn it into spam sometimes in some filters.
Yeah.
So
check your junk filter, check your junk mail, check your, and make Kelly, if you find it in junk mail and you're using, what Outlook and whatever, be sure to make Kelly a safe sender so that her next emails will come directly to your box. So.
And
I mentioned that you don't have to individually let Kelly know, hey, I want them, her messages. They're coming to the distribution list. So just check it.
Yeah. Every single, it should be every single user in the footprint. It should be getting it. And two, I promise you, if you don't find value, tell me. If you say, hey, I've been getting your emails for a while, it just doesn't seem to be working for me. I want to have the best content that is usable, tangible, and you can run with it immediately. So if it's not, I want you to let me know, because I get about zero feedback. So send me your feedback, break it apart. Tell me what you would like to see more of. I want to hear that. So I'll get some of these emails and just check, but you should be getting them, but I'll take note of anybody that's in chat. And thank you all for letting us do this. This has been great. Yeah,
thank you. And like I said, if you have an opportunity, joining me on becoming a Facebook friend doesn't cost you anything. And that way I'm not going to bombard you with a bunch of emails, because nobody likes a bunch of emails. I know I don't, but the Facebook updates are always available to you to look at. I share stuff as a JPEG on my page. So if you want to share it onto your Facebook page, you can. There's a lot of good relevant information on there. Some of it you may not understand, but some of the stuff that I put on there is pretty basic info that you can share on your page, just to make you look like, I want you to be a force in the real estate community. And I don't understand it, but nobody here locally talks about the market. I don't know why, but they don't. So just use these tools that I'm presenting to you, and they don't cost anything. So please take advantage of it.
Well, thank you so much, Andrew. It was incredibly helpful information. Kelly, I'm going to push it back to you again. Number one, thank you for today and for the class today. It was wonderful. The next thank you is going to be for next Thursday. Community Mortgage is sponsoring a national speaker for our Thursday class. It will be the full 3 hours. Would you like to talk about that, Kelly?
I was calling.
I would love to talk about that. So as I love to bring value, I consume content all the time, trying to find new things to give myself and our loan officers and you all in the real estate community an edge. And I was blown away by this speaker. I had to take it because I'm a state certified instructor for some things. And I've done, if you have been an instructor before, have you seen it? Teach the Teacher can be a snooze fest. But this woman, her name's Juanita, she brought it so down to tangible things. It was an onslaught of amazing information. We are on Zoom, and we will probably be on Zoom for a long time, whether we are meeting in person or not, because it's just so much easier to connect that way in long distance settings or just on the go. And so if you start to do these, if you start to instruct, or if you do buyer presentations or anything on Zoom, she gave so many amazing tools about just upping your game on how to, it's not necessarily a Zoom class as more as how to teach and how to instruct and how to engage. Every single one of us was engaged within 10 minutes of her talk. And we did this for 7 hours. And we're not doing 7 hours this time, but we are doing 3. And I'm telling you, it will go by so fast. If anybody else was on the call, I think it was on the Zoom, I think it was in December, and she was just phenomenal. And she's so fun. You will not be bored, and she will teach you how to not be boring. And that's what I love. And so we're really excited to do this. I love bringing new information to you all. I love bringing education and anything that can add value to you. And you're a better agent for doing so the very next day. So We are really excited to bring that. Please tune in. She's going to be phenomenal. Even if, I mean, she's just going to give you so much information. You better bring a huge notebook because she'll give you a lot of notes.
Yeah, we're definitely